The family that went missing after dinner was served. At 6:12 p.m., a neighbor waved the kitchen window and saw a mother lift a pot lid and laugh at something her husband said off camera. Steam drifted up, the kind of domestic fog that makes a house look full. By 7:40, every plate on that table was cold, the front door was locked from the inside, and the Whitaker family of Hollow Creek, Indiana, was gone. If you drive out there now, past the feed store and the ball fields, you'll find Cedar Lane, a quiet loop of ranch houses and maple trees, with the mulch always raked just so. Number 1124 sits halfway around, brick front, new gutters, a flag that snaps in the wind on Fridays. Tom and Jenna Whitaker moved in at the start of summer with their 2 kids, Eli, 10, who wore his baseball cap to dinner, and Nora, 6, who always asked for extra gravy and then forgot to eat it. Sunday night was pot roast night. It had been for 3 months. You could have set your watch by it on the dot, stove to table, 2 kids, 2 adults, a glass of iced tea sweating onto a cork coaster. The neighbors had jokes about it, predictability in a world that refused to cooperate. That's what made the timeline so clean and so ugly. 6:03 p.m. Jenna texts her sister a photo of the roast on the counter, pan juices gleaming. "Come by after 7 if you want leftovers," she writes. A minute later, the sister replies with a thumbs up. Last normal message. 6:12 p.m. Mr. Kellerman across the street takes his trash to the curb. He raises a hand toward the Whitakers' kitchen window. Jenna lifts the lid and fans her face with a towel, grinning. A human little moment, the kind we remember because we need to. 6:21 p.m. The doorbell rings, not a delivery. Tom's truck is already in the drive with a grocery bag on the passenger seat. It's a neighbor kid selling fundraiser candy bars. He leaves with a $5 bill and a joke about owing Eli 2 runs next game. He remembers a smell like thyme and something sweet. 6:27 p.m. Grace at the table. They say it every week, not out loud, exactly just heads bowed, hands half held, Eli peeking for a second and smirking when his dad opens one eye back at him. Nobody records this. We only know because the plates show it, forks set to the side, napkins folded once, that moment before the first bite where the room decides to be quiet. 6:31 p.m. A call ping hits 911 for 18 seconds from the Whitakers' landline. It's mostly clink and hiss silverware, chair legs. Then something that could be a whisper bends the static into words. Dispatch records it as indecipherable. A technician later isolates it and hears 6 syllables that will keep her up at night. No, that's not for you. 6:33 p.m. The porch light goes on. The doorbell camera grabs 5 seconds of nothing but a moth, a little gray triangle beating itself against the lens. There are no saved clips before or after, because the system is set to record only on motion at the front door. The kitchen motion sensor is disarmed. Tom always kills it before dinner so he's not getting notifications every time somebody reaches for salt. 6:41 p.m. The neighbor's toddler throws a tantrum next door. The parents will later say they thought they heard a pressure change, the soft thump of an exterior door, but they were busy bribing a 3-year-old with raspberries and SpongeBob, and you can't build a case on parenting. 6:47 p.m. The oven timer dings. No one turns it off. The roast should have been resting. Later, the probes will still show heat in the meat, pink in the center, a clock the body leaves behind when the people forget to. 7:02 p.m. Jenna's sister, running late, texts, "On my way." The message doesn't deliver. 3 dots, breathe, and die. 7:11 p.m. The porch light clicks off. The house looks closed. That's when the world begins to notice. At 7:28 p.m., Jenna's sister pulls into the drive and notices the oddest first thing: the dog. Buddy, a golden mix with one ear that refuses to commit, is sitting in the front window like a person staring at nothing. He doesn't bark, he doesn't wag. His head tips in a way that says he is doing math. The sister knocks. No answer. She texts again. She puts her hand on the knob out of habit. It stops. The deadbolt is thrown. Inside deadbolt. The kind you need a key for, even to get out. She takes out her phone and calls. It rings inside on the counter, right by the fridge, with the weekly calendar magneted in green and purple. Monday practice, Tuesday Tom, late shift, Sunday roast. There's an extra word in Sunday's box. It says, guest, with a question mark, shaped like an afterthought. When she can't make her brain buy any of the options it's offering, she calls Deputy Hal Briggs. He lives 4 doors down and has been out to this house before to admire Tom's plywood batting tee and talk about mowing. He arrives at 7:40, knocks, calls their names, and then does the thing that makes him itch. He uses his key. Hal holds a spare for half the street because his wife used to pet sit. He slides it in under the chain, strains, and stops. The chain is set. He doesn't like what that means. He radios for a unit and a supervisor and calls for permission to breach. It takes until 7:52 to get the line clear, and the "you sure" that goes with it. He's sure. The chain gives under the bolt cutters with a sound like a sidelong glance. They step into a version of a room no one wants to see. The table is set for 4. Steam ghosts the underside of the pendant light. One plate looks like Nora's the gravy moat dug into a trench by a fork and left there as she chased a better idea. On the stove, the timer is still blinking. The oven heat has given up. A pot holder sits slightly crooked, the way it does when a person has set something down in a rush and reached for something else. The dog goes to howl with relief, so physical he stumbles into the wall. Buddy's water bowl is empty. His paws smell faintly of broom closet cedar. They call out names, they push open doors, they find the master bedroom with Tom's wallet and Jenna's purse on the dresser, they find Eli's hat on the floor by the couch, and a TV paused on a baseball highlight, the kind where professionals make small things look easy. They find the hallway bathroom with the shower dry, and a towel folded the way Jenna folds towels, sides in, then thirds, like a letter. The back slider is locked, the windows are latched from the inside. There is no sign of a fight. There is no sign of leaving. There is only dinner cooling into a clock. Detective Rena Morales catches the case at 8:17. She listens to Hal on the porch and watches the sister hold the dog like a life jacket. She moves through the house in slow circles, marking tiny facts. A chair that isn't tucked in. A thin smear on the floor by the sink like someone lifted a plate too fast and dripped. The garage door status on the wall panel says, closed. The panel thinks it never opened after 4:03 p.m. The back door sensor has a fault log at 6:58 that reads jam. The front doorbell shows no one at the door after the fundraiser kit. Rena steps into the kitchen and feels it instantly, the way a room can be hot and cold at the same time. She holds her hand over the roast and feels a ghost of heat. She leans toward the counter where the family phones sit, stacked Jenna's, Tom's. The kids' school tablets are in a tub by the microwave, charging. A set of keys hangs on a hook by the mudroom door house key, mailbox key, tiny baseball on a ring. Beside the keys, a place where a third ring might go sits empty and dusty. In the junk drawer, there are 3 spare deadbolt keys. 2 are labeled, 1 is not. They canvass, maple to maple, porch to porch. Mr. Kellerman repeats the window wave and the laugh, and then remembers one more thing. Around 6:40, he heard music. Not from a speaker. Something like humming. A low male voice, one note held too long. He thought it was the ball game on low volume through a wall. He thought it was the water heater. Memory is a bad witness. It changes clothes while you watch. At 9:03, a K-9 team tracks scent from the front walk to the mailbox, and then to the side yard, and then to the back fence, and then nothing. The dog, Duke, does a small circle at the oak. He sits and looks up. Later, a tech will climb and find, in the crotch of the tree, a scuff mark like a heel and a shred of dark fabric hung on a twig. It's not Whitaker clothing. It's not enough. Midnight. The house hums under portable lights. A CSI tech named Fielding measures plate temperatures and scribbles. Confused by the consistency, 4 plates cooling at the same rate, interrupted by nothing. On the audio side, the 911 ping call plays on a loop in a corner faint clink, an intake of breath, the 6 syllables. No, that's not for you. Fielding finds, under the table, a 5th chair leg scuff on the floor older than tonight, fresh enough to matter. A chair was pulled out and put back at some point this week. Maybe tonight. The fridge calendar's guest feels less cute now. By morning, the town knows. The Walmart greeter knows. The coffee shop barista says Whitaker's under her breath, like it's a word you can put down somewhere and it will stop being hot. Tipsy theories arrive like sparrows and stay. Cult, witness protection, an affair, gas leak, carbon monoxide. The FD checks levels, checks chimneys, checks the dryer vent like it's hiding an answer. Everything reads fine. Rena brings in digital forensics. The doorbell logs show a glitch at 6:32 camera resets, 3 seconds of gray, then that moth beating itself to death against salvation. The Wi-Fi router shows a spike at 6:31, as if another device hopped on and hopped off instantly. The smart thermostat recorded a drop of 2 degrees at 6:34, then a manual bump back up. Someone touched it. The system was set to hold. No one should have been touching it. They pull road cams. A sedan goes by at 6:50 without a plate light. An SUV rolls through the four-way at 6:59, slowing, then accelerating as if someone changed their mind. Every car is a suspect until it becomes someone just trying to get home. 2 days in, a utility worker flags something odd. The junction box that feeds the cul-de-sac shows a draw on one of the secondary lines at 6:35 minor, like someone powered on a device connected somewhere it shouldn't be. When they open the Whitaker's crawl space, they find a thin orange extension cord snaking from the water heater closet to the void beneath the dining room. At its end, a tiny off-brand splitter with a single USB port. Nothing is plugged in now. The dust around it has a new pattern, as if something was unplugged recently and lifted away carefully by someone who did not want to be seen. Whoever sat at that table may have been recording the dinner and took the recorder with them. Day 3, a utility tech mapping gas lines notices a chalk mark by the Whitaker's mailbox post, a circle with a diagonal slash, standard for no cut. But it isn't their spray paint, it's chalk. The 2 houses at the end of the street have similar marks, drawn lightly, fading, somebody moving through, marking without permission. Day 4, Rena goes back to the 911 audio. She closes her eyes and listens past the obvious. Silverware. The hum of the fridge, a chair dragging. Then, faint, something metallic clicks open and shut, twice, and is followed by the whisper. No, that's not for you. The phrasing sticks. Not, that's not yours. Not, don't. It's rejection of a gift, of a plate, of a ritual. There's one other thing. The roast half carved has a slice placed at the far end of the platter where no one sat. It faces an empty chair that isn't there, except for the leg scuff under the table. The kids' plates have a bite missing. Tom's knife is smeared with hues and set down on the wrong side of his plate. The left, though everyone who knows Tom will tell you he's the kind of neat creature who puts his knife back on the right without thinking. Jenna's napkin is unfolded but still triangular, the way you lay it down when you're getting up to fetch something and mean to come right back. In the muddle of theories, a neighbor from 2 streets over walks in at the end of the week and puts an old story on the counter like a piece of broken china, a similar Sunday dinner, different house decades ago. Plates cooling, a chair left pulled, one phrase heard by a child who had no business remembering, it's set for 5. Nothing came of it then either. People moved, houses forget. Rena stands in the Whitaker kitchen at dusk and tries to feel what they felt at 6:31. 4 plates, 1 question mark on a calendar. A door that's still locked, a backslider that's still latched, a dog who will sit in a window and do math until someone comes home. She presses a palm to the tabletop. It's just wood. She thinks about that whisper. No, that's not for you. There are only a few things people say that about at dinner, food, drink, a place at the table. Did someone arrive and reach? Did someone who wasn't invited touch a plate, a glass, a chair? Did Tom or Jenna speak that sentence as a boundary? And if they did, what was the consequence? They don't find footprints. They don't find a tunnel or a mislaid attic door. The crawl space is a cramped negative of the house, full of spiderwebs and decisions from 50 years ago. They find one more thing anyway. On a joist directly under the dining table, a string tied from nail to nail to nail, 3 points, a triangle you would not notice unless you were crawling. In the center, a small loop of thread hangs down, the end snapped. A child's toy could have swung there, or a charm, or nothing, or a joke. Rena stares at it too long and then writes, "String? Ritual? Prank?" and underlines ritual twice and crosses it out. Weeks pass. The case sits in a stack with a colored tab that makes it look like it belongs there. It doesn't. Buddy lives with Jenna's sister now and sleeps in a new window. Sometimes he wakes at 6:31 p.m., goes to the kitchen and sits, like a person waiting for a tide he can't see. The town quietly changes its behavior. People stop writing "guest" on calendars. They eat at 6, 5, or at 7, 10 out of spite. They tell each other it was a stalker, or a traveling hand who marked mailboxes, or gas, or a family decision made too quickly and enforced too cleanly. Every now and then, Rena stands in her own kitchen and sets 4 plates for 2 just to see the shape of it, and feels a small, unpleasant urge to pull a chair out an inch or two for no one. She never does. The Whitakers are still gone. The roast was thrown away the next day because you can't leave meat out. The dinner dishes were bagged for evidence and then released and then washed by Jenna's sister with hands that shook and didn't spill. The chain on the front door has a new plate and screws. The chalk mark by the mailbox is gone under rain and time. The calendar square for Sunday stays blank now. If you ask around Cedar Lane, people will tell you something different than what the file says. Officially, it's a missing persons case with a tangled timeline. Unofficially, the town has decided this. Dinner was served, and somebody, or something, reached for a place that wasn't theirs. And after that, the family who lived there stood up, without scraping their chairs, and left. Left where? That's the part the street won't say out loud. It's the part that keeps the porch lights on just a touch brighter at 6:31, and the part that makes people set exactly the number of plates they need, and not one more, and check the locks not because a stranger might come in, but because in Hollow Creek, on a very ordinary Sunday, a whole family walked out of a locked house and never used the door. The knock that always came from inside the bedroom. The first knock came at 1:13 a.m. from the other side of my bedroom door, the side I was already standing in. I had just moved into the upstairs apartment over Myers Hardware on Laurel Avenue, one of those old brick buildings where the stairwell smells like dust and rain, and the thin window at the landing turns every passing headlight into a slow ghost. My boxes were still stacked in the hall, a mattress on the floor, a borrowed lamp throwing a weak yellow circle against plaster that had learned to crack politely. I'd brushed my teeth, killed the kitchen light, and was headed for bed when the door I was reaching for knocked back 3 soft taps from inside the room. I froze with my palm on the knob. The hallway kept breathing the way hallways do, but the space behind the door felt occupied. Not noisy, not violent, just taken. I stood there, listening to my own heart hit the wrong tempo, and then, because pride will get you in trouble, I turned the knob and pushed. My bedroom was empty. Window latched, closet closed, the radiator sulked, the mattress lay where I'd left it, a slope of quilt against the wall. I laughed out loud, which is what people do when they need the room to take their side, and said, "Okay," to no one. I checked the doorframe, old wood, paint layered to gloss, nothing strange. I went to sleep with the light on. The second night, it happened again. 1:13 on the dot, my phone face down on the floor, lit and told me so. I was already inside the bedroom this time, halfway lost to sleep, when 3 knocks sounded from the empty hall, except when I opened the door a second later. The hall was quiet, and the light I'd left on in the kitchen hummed like an insect. The knocks had come from the side I was on. From the room itself, I told myself heat makes pipes talk. I told myself old doors settle. Still, I dragged the end table against the bedroom door and slept with one eye open the way you do when you camp too close to the trail and every twig wants to audition for wolf. By the third night, the knocks had learned other places. At 1:13, 3 soft taps, this time from the closet. I sat up so fast the lamp almost toppled. The door to the closet was shut, paint puckered near the knob like a healed wound. I stared until stars flecked the corners of my vision. When I finally stood, I did it like I was trying not to offend the floor. I reached out. The knob felt too cold, like it had been holding its breath. I opened it. Coats I hadn't hung yet. Shelves with nothing but a pack of bulbs. Air that smelled like cedar and house dust. From somewhere deep in the wall, 3 more taps. I slept on the couch. By day 4, I had built a schedule around dreading 1 minute. I stayed at work late, I ran to the river, looped the park, came home sweaty and hopeful that exhaustion would erase superstition. At 1:10, I lay awake anyway, counting the radiator ticks. At 1:13, knock, knock, knock from the inside of my headboard wall at ear level, like a neighbor asking me to keep it down. I put a glass against the plaster, the stupid trick you learn from movies, and heard only my own blood, which at that hour makes a rhythm you can't dance to. I pressed my palm to the wall, and it pressed back only because walls always do. I didn't sleep until morning. On Saturday, I went downstairs and asked Mr. Robb Meyer if anyone had lived here recently. He adjusted his glasses and said the last tenant left fast, an overnight thing. Trouble? I asked. He shrugged. People make their own weather. I bought felt pads for furniture and a door sweep for the bedroom and almost asked him if old buildings knock at you when they're lonely. My neighbor across the hall, a retired music teacher named Doug who wore a cardigan even in July, knocked on my frame right as I was installing the sweep. You settling in? He asked, peering past me. I told him about the sound. He made a face like a chord that doesn't resolve. Pipes, he said, or mice. Everything here has a library of reasons. I asked if he'd ever heard it. He looked at my door too long and said, no, but not in the voice of a man who has never heard a thing. That night, I staged an experiment. I taped a strip of paper across the bedroom door so if it opened, it would tear. I lined the closet door with painter's tape, a blue seam that would remember being disturbed. I sprinkled a light dusting of flour just inside the threshold because I didn't know what I believed, and sometimes the body needs props. I set my phone to record. At 1:13, the bedroom door knocked 3 polite measured taps from the side facing me. The paper strip fluttered, intact, the knob didn't turn, no one stood outside. I stared at the blank screen of my phone for courage, and then opened the door to the hall. It was darker than it should have been. The light over the stairwell, a pale bulb in a cage had gone out. The air felt cooler, like someone had opened the long window and let in a pocket of midnight. I leaned down. The flower line on the floor inside my room was undisturbed. Behind me, from the closet, 3 more knocks. The blue tape sat right where I'd put it. I backed into the hall and heard, very distinctly, 3 taps on the hall side of the bedroom door from inside the bedroom I was no longer in. I slept sitting up that night, the way people do in waiting rooms. The video the next morning was infuriating. The timestamp rolled to 1:13, and the audio caught the taps plainly. The frame didn't flicker. The door didn't move. The flower stayed flower. I watched it 3 times, then a 4th, letting anger take me somewhere besides fear. On the 5th watch, I noticed something I had missed. The shadow at the baseboard under the door, a thin gray tongue that shifted inward at the exact moment of the 3rd knock, as if the room inhaled. On Sunday, I called the non-emergency line and asked if an officer could stop by. Officer Dwyer came, young and careful with his questions. He checked the window locks, tried the fittings around the radiator, looked at the closet like it owed him money. He rapped the door with his knuckles and listened. Older place, he said at last. They talk. Could be a shared wall. Store downstairs, fridge motors, furnace cycling. If you hear anything else, people call. He meant it. It didn't help. That afternoon, I found a maintenance panel inside the closet behind a row of old nails. A square of painted wood low near the floor with 4 screws that weren't all twins. It felt like a secret kept by a person who wasn't very good at keeping secrets. I stared at it for a long minute before unscrewing anything. It made sense that sound travels through voids. It made less sense that voids chose funny hours to be polite. At 12:58 a.m., I lifted the panel free. Cold air spilled into the closet from the dark cavity beyond some kind of old service channel, barely tall enough to admit a hand, running sideways through the wall. I slid my phone inside with the flashlight on and clicked a photo. The picture showed rough lath, a desiccated spider, a coin someone had lost decades ago, and farther back, a strip of fabric snagged on a nail. Blue. A shirt or sheet? Fresh edges. My mouth went dry in a way that had nothing to do with ghosts. Then 1. 13 arrived like a timetable finally honored. From the cavity, just beyond my wrist. Knock, knock. I snatched my hand back so fast my fingernails kissed wood. The panel clattered to the floor. I shoved it into place. 1 screw, 2, 3, 4, fingers shaking. I turned and pressed my back against the closet door, heart climbing into my throat like it wanted to see for itself. The next day, I told myself stories in which the cloth was old and had always been there. I told myself stories in which sound acts like weather, moving around a mountain, bending, doing what it wants, and that a knock can go where it pleases. I told myself to sleep at a friend's, but embarrassment is heavier than fear, so I went home after my shift and heated soup I didn't taste and set an alarm for 1:10 so I could be upright and proof against the moment. At 1:13 there were 3 knocks, but they came from the inside of my headboard wall again, from right where my ear had rested when I tried to pretend this was all stubborn plumbing. Behind the panel, the screws ticked like they were cooling after a long drive. I stared at the ceiling and cycled through every person I could call in the middle of the night. I texted Doug across the hall, "Are you awake?" He wrote back in less than a minute. "Do not open that panel again," he sent. The message carried a weight that wasn't just caps lock. "Have you heard it?" I typed. He wrote, "Old buildings teach you which noises belong to you." The following afternoon, Mrs. Meyer, a woman with a sharp bob and a merciful way of getting to the point, caught me in the entryway and said, "You're the one upstairs?" I nodded. She glanced at the stairwell window, then lowered her voice. "If you hear anything after 1, it's best to sit on your hands until 2. She smiled like she'd admitted a superstition and didn't mind looking foolish. We had a tenant who kept getting up to check. It got worse when she did. She moved out quick, couldn't keep a job with no sleep. "What was it?" I asked, surprising myself with the boldness of wanting an answer. Mrs. Meyer shook her head. "Sometimes it's better to be wrong than to be right." The 6th night, I did nothing. I didn't set my phone. I didn't lay tape. I didn't brandish a glass against the wall like a detective. I lay on my back and counted the breath in my body. And when 1:13 arrived, the knocks did too. Gentle, unhurried, 3. And then a second set, 3 from the closet, 3 from the hall, like call and response in a church where nobody knows the hymn anymore. I sat up, and light-headed stubbornness took the wheel. "What do you want?" I asked the empty air, my own voice absurd and brave and breaking. It felt ridiculous to try language on something that had learned to behave like weather. Silence followed, the good kind, big enough to stand in. I fell asleep sometime after 2, staring at the thin line where the wall met the ceiling, a seam no one had bothered to caulk. In the morning, my phone showed a notification I hadn't made voice memo, 1:13:117a. I hadn't asked it to record. I pressed play and heard my own breath, the fan, the gentle cittern of a city that thinks it's small and something else. Not the knocks. A voice, faint, layered, trapped in plaster. 4 words. Not quite a whisper. "Don't open from inside." I stood in the center of the room, holding the phone like a relic, and felt the shape of a choice. There is the kind of story where you keep unscrewing things until you find the person living in your walls. There is the kind where you call a contractor and a cop and a cameraman, and you become a cautionary tale with B-roll. There is also the kind where you don't give the thing what it asks for. That night, I stacked books against the closet door, not because I thought paper would stop anything, but because paper remembers. I moved the bed 2 feet away from the headboard wall so that if the knocks came, they'd have to cross a little more air to reach me. I set a cheap battery clock on the nightstand that ticked loud on purpose. I texted Doug, "I'm okay. If you hear me moving around between 1 and 2, pretend you don't." At 1:13, the knocks came soft as a habit. 3 from the wall, 3 from the closet, 3 from the door itself, right at my shoulder height. I didn't move. My body begged me to be polite and answer, the way a lifetime of doorbell culture has trained us. I counted the ticks. I counted the spaces between them. At 1:21, the plaster popped, the way old walls do when they remember to settle, and something about that ordinary sound unhooked a thread of fear. At 1:29, a deeper, dull knock thudded through the floor downstairs, followed by the muffled slam of a back door. I sat up, heart in my throat, and heard footsteps in the alley behind Myers, quick, unpracticed. A motion light blinked. A voice cursed. A car door opened and closed. The sound moved away. The building breathed. An hour later, Mrs. Meyer texted neighbors share numbers because emergencies love company. Security camera caught someone trying the rear entrance at 1:20. They didn't get in. "We'll replace the light," she wrote. "Call if you need anything." I stared at the timestamp and looked at my clock and felt the hairs on my forearms lift in a way that had nothing to do with cold. For the next week, 1:13 was a ritual I observed but did not honor. The knocks arrived. Sometimes they moved closet, door, headboard like a small animal running circuits. Sometimes they didn't. On 2 nights, nothing happened at all, and I learned that relief can keep you awake longer than fear. I didn't open the panel. I didn't open the door to answer a rhythm I hadn't invited. I ate better. I started running again. I slept with the lamp off. On a clear Friday, I came home to find a note slid under my door in tidy block letters. If you're hearing it, you're doing better than I did. Sit still. Don't feed it. It hates being ignored. I knocked on Doug's door. He smiled, embarrassed, like a man caught caring. "Old tenant left a letter in my box once," he said. "I kept it in case." He lifted his chin toward my wall. "It's not for us." "Then who?" I asked. Doug shrugged the way people do when explanations feel like traps. "Somewhere there's a room that didn't get shut right, and it keeps trying our door." That night, at 1:13, the knocks came. One set, then another, and then, for the first time, a single, hesitant tap that sounded less like a demand than like a hand that forgot what it was reaching for. "No," I said gently, and surprised myself with the ease of it. "Not tonight." The air on my arm warmed. The clock ticked. The building adjusted its weight around us like a sleeper rolling to the other side of the bed. I slept until the bakery bell, 2 blocks over, rang its opening cheer into the morning. It isn't all gone. Some nights the closet remembers to breathe. Sometimes the panel hums with a draft you can feel only if you put your ear to it. Sometimes I dream of blue fabric snagged on an old nail, and wake with the taste of dust in my mouth and have to drink a glass of water in the doorway just to prove the room has only the one dimension. But there are more good nights than bad. When people ask how I like living above the hardware store, I tell them it's convenient. I point to the paint chips on my counter like I'm the sort of person who paints on purpose. I don't tell them the part where a minute of my life kept trying to be bigger than the rest of my day. If someone stays over, I don't warn them, I watch instead. If they startle at 1:13, I say, "Old pipes," and we both accept the lie we can live with. The last time I heard 3 knocks from inside my bedroom, they were so soft, I almost missed them. I lay there with my palm on the plaster and thought of the voice on the recording, the one that had sounded like words trying to squeeze through lath. "Don't open from inside." I still don't know if it was a warning or a rule or the worst kind of invitation. I followed it anyway. Now, if the knock comes, the door and I keep each other's secrets. I stay where I am. I let the minute pass. Outside, Laurel Avenue turns a light from red to green, and the world goes on pretending it knows which way traffic should move. Inside, the bedroom remembers it is a room, not a mouth. And the knock, deprived of being answered, fades, like a habit you starve, until even the walls forget the shape of the hand that taught them. The whisper beside her pillow called her name. The first time the whisper beside her pillow called her name, it was 1:17 a.m., and the apartment over the corner laundromat on Ash Street smelled like warm detergent and rain. The neon open sign below blinked into the ceiling, slow and exhausted, painting her walls with a tired red pulse. Tess Carmichael woke in that way. Your body sometimes does, already listening, already braced, without remembering the dream that threw her back onto the surface of the dark. "Tess," it said. Not loud, not stage whisper. A measured breath shaped carefully around the letters, as if the mouth saying it were very close to her ear, right at the edge of her pillow. She lay still, and watched the rectangle of her window. A bus sighed on Maple. Someone laughed a block away, too late, too bright, and the laugh thinned into the wet air and disappeared. The whisper did not come again. She could make 100 explanations in the next 4 minutes: old pipes, neighbors, her own sleep doing the parlor tricks bodies do when you run them too hard. She had closed both windows, the AC was off, the floor fan was set to the kind of low that barely counts as trying. The room felt crowded by attention. At 1:22, she turned on her phone and let the screen burn her eyes like an argument. The battery percentage looked like a dare. She typed a message to no one and didn't send it. When she finally slept, she did it like falling through old paper-thin, fragile, noisy all the way down. Morning did what morning does in a building like that. The first dryer started at 6:10, a rattling coin opera that shook the cups in her cabinet. Mrs. Patel in 2A fed quarters to the soda machine until it agreed she was right. Tess made coffee in a chipped mug that said nope in a font that refused to apologize. By 7:30, she had convinced herself she'd dreamed it. People dream whispers all the time. People wake thinking their name has been called and then live entire lives without deciding who did the calling. At 1:17 the next night, the whisper came again. Tess. It was closer, if such a thing made sense. Not at the bedroom doorway, not through the heat register. At the pillow, beside her cheek, level with her mouth. She kept still with the precision of animals. Her name sounds different depending on who says it. Her mother made it a 2-syllable question. Managers flatten it into a clock. Strangers try to be friendly and turn it into Tessa. This was her name shaped correctly. It wore the part in the middle the way people who know you do. She slid her hand under the pillow for her phone, careful like the bedding might argue. She opened the voice recorder app, thumb heavy, the bar graph jumping in blue. The whisper didn't come again. She recorded 30 seconds of her own breath and the laundromat's ghost rhythm. She fell asleep to the soft grind of a spin cycle below her floor. In the morning, she played it back because that is what you do when your life is suddenly a test. There was the fan, the low outside traffic, the hum of the soda machine 3 hours older than it should be. At 0:17, there was a sound like someone assembling the word she used to be. Not quite a syllable. The shape of one. She didn't tell anyone at the diner on Elm where she worked the breakfast shift, and enough of the lunch that her back carried dinner home as a souvenir. You ask coworkers about whispers, and they give you a look that puts more weight on your tray. She poured coffee for men with hands like tools, and women who sat in groups of 3 and shared a single grief without saying its name out loud. She refilled the sugar. She avoided the bathroom mirror because some morning's reflections are more opinions than facts. By the third night, the whisper had a pattern she could wear like a bruise. 1:17 exactly, as if the minute had a key and the room learned to turn. The name came once, shaped carefully, almost kindly, then nothing. She practiced not reacting. She practiced the measured breath actors use when they want the audience to believe their character is asleep. On the fourth night, when the whisper said her name, it followed it with another word. Don't. Just that. No verb. An idea with its brakes on. She could have moved then. Spent a paycheck she didn't have on a motel on the highway where the ice machine never stops trying. Called her sister in Phoenix and asked about the spare room that was always full of the kind of boxes people insist are temporary. But life isn't a horror movie that adds a violin section when you reach for your keys. Life is rent, and the bus schedule, and the regular who tips in quarters, and the cat at the dumpster who trusts you exactly as far as you let it. She stayed. On the fifth night, the whisper said more. Tess, don't turn. Her body had been preparing to do exactly that, the shoulder roll you make so the room becomes a wall and sleep is a place you can put your face. She froze. The word don't carried a shape she recognized in it, the tired kindness of nurses, the pleas of traffic cops, the certainty of someone who has learned to rule the hard way. Why? She whispered, surprised to hear herself choose to speak. The room had agreed to her being quiet. She wasn't sure it would permit this new verb. The pause felt like the space in a church when people decide how much of the hymn they remember. Then, he's here. Her name is not a common one in the building, but he is. He is the word people use when they want a shadow to do the labor a name would have to do. Tess swallowed and tasted coin. Where? She said. A whisper to match a whisper. The bed springs did not complain when she flexed her toes. The neon below blinked and rested. The fan counted to itself. The whisper came again, the mouth close enough to make a gust you'd only notice if you were the one being noticed. Doorway, it said. Not yet. Tess didn't turn her head. She looked at the doorway with the corner of her eye until her left temple hurt. She saw then what she wouldn't have trusted a testimony to give her in the morning. A difference in the dark. Not a shape, a piece of the hallway that hadn't committed to being hallway. It had depth where the rest had length. Even calling it an outline would have been a compliment. She stared until the black there became a color, and then not. The whisper held its breath with her, or she held hers with it. Time didn't break, it just got wider. Footsteps above, someone in 3B making the long trip from bed to kitchen, the scent of yeast when the baker on the corner started the first batch. The neon below clicked to darkness for the length of 2 heartbeats, and then remembered. In the doorway, the wrong piece of dark leaned in, then leaned back, then let the hallway be what it was. Tess didn't move. The whisper did one small thing, something that felt like a nod pressed into air and was gone. She slept like a person whose body remembered the instructions it had been given. She dreamed of being a kid on a back seat, trying not to fall asleep, because the radio at night is different, as if the car becomes a ship and words come from farther away. She woke at 6, 4 to the Dryer's second song and the trash truck practicing bass. That morning, she moved the bed 3 inches away from the wall because someone online said moving furniture changes the way rooms breathe. She taped a little line of thread across the bottom of the door to see if air moved more than it should. She asked Mr. Alvarez at the bodega if he'd ever heard anything strange through the vents. He smiled and made a short crossing gesture in a language of his grandmother and said, "Old buildings keep their phone numbers." She bought batteries for the smoke detector and a new lock for the back door because sometimes practical things are the only offerings the day understands. At 1:17, the whisper said her name again, and then her father's. She had not heard anyone say it like that in a long time. He had gone quiet by degrees, the way men do who aren't sure how to apologize to children they love for waves they couldn't stop. He had called her Tess when she was in trouble, Tessie when he wanted to fix it, Teresa only to hear the joke in formal clothes. The whisper made his name into a shape that understood both versions of him at once. "Don't turn," it said. "Not when you hear it." "Hear what?" She breathed. "Your name." From there, the whisper meant the doorway. She felt the word lean in that direction. It will sound like you want it to. The hallway past her door seemed to elongate, as if someone were stretching the building to see what it would stand. The wrong piece of dark thickened again, and inside it, from a place mouths go when they want to move air they don't own, came her name. Not like the whisper. Like the first time you answer a call from a number you should have blocked. And don't? Friendly. Familiar. A voice you'd walk into the hall for because that's how you're built. "Tess," it said. "Hey, can you..." The whisper at her pillow touched the word with its breath, and it fell apart like ash. "Don't," the whisper said. "It learns. He learns." She kept her face toward the window and watched the neon below draw red stripes on her wall, like someone closing a stage curtain one string at a time. The voice in the hall tried once more, friendly sliding toward impatient, and then not unlike a coin dropped in deep water, sank. After it, Tess shook, not dramatically, not for a camera, the controlled tremor of someone who has held a pose too long. She didn't cry, she didn't get up and throw the door open to prove a point. She lay there until the laundromat began its daily refusing and accepting of people like a tide. She made changes after that. She pulled the bed 2 feet from the doorway, angled the headboard so there was no direct line between the pillow and the hall. She installed a chain, long screws, top bracket, and lower, because a door sometimes needs to be told twice. She wrote 1:17 on a yellow sticky note and stuck it to the inside of the closet because naming a thing sometimes takes away the part of it that likes being a surprise. The whisper came on schedule. Never early. Never twice. Some nights it added a word. Wait. Or now. Or gone. Once it said, breathe, at the exact second her chest had forgotten. Another night it said, in a tone her mother would have used when reminding her to take the pie out, count. She did. To 30? To 60? To a number that doesn't have a shape when you are awake, between the minutes other people are allowed to keep. She started carrying those minutes with her during the day. She moved through the diner like a quiet cyclone, plates out, coffee poured, names remembered, and felt the one, 17, living in her pocket like a coin you can't spend. She asked Mrs. Patel about the building's history and learned nothing but dates and a rumor about a movie theater that used to be where the storage room was now. She stopped by the library on her break and read microfilm the way archaeologists stare at sand. A flicker caught her breath, an old column about a girl who wandered the halls here when it was a boarding house and knocked on doors she wasn't supposed to. The notice used the kind of adjectives people did when they didn't want to admit the night took someone they knew. She copied the column and folded it with the carefulness of people who don't know what part of the story they're saving. The whisper never changed its temperature. It did not become intimate, it did not become cruel. It offered a rule every night and asked her to follow it. She wondered whether someone had once followed a different rule, and what shape that story made in a room, and whether cities keep letters people mean to send but don't. A week after the first night, it rained hard enough to make the laundromat steam. The neon fizzed and decided to be brave. The whisper was late one, 18 just enough to convince her she had earned a reprieve. And then it said her name with a precision that made her eyes sting. Don't turn, it said. Please. The hallway had depth again, but this time the wrong piece of dark wasn't at the doorway, it was closer. Inside the room. At the foot of the bed where the rug is heavier because feet teach it that. She felt the attention move over her like someone dragging a sleeve across a table to see whether the cloth will catch. It stopped at her shoulder. It waited the way people wait outside bathrooms when they know someone is in there and they hope they aren't being rude. Then it leaned just enough to make the mattress understand weight. The whisper beside her pillow shaped a sound without a word, and the weight lifted, offended the way weather is when it learns it is not the only rule in play. At 1:20, the building remembered it was brick. The wrong piece of dark unpacked itself and left. The whisper did not say another word. It didn't need to. The next day, Tess found a small scuff near the baseboard where the bed frame meets the wall, as if something impatient had tapped there to draw her attention. She crouched and saw, for the first time, a little gap in the trim, nothing big enough for a mouse, only big enough for draft and rumor. Behind it, a vertical chase that led to floors above and below. Old buildings keep their phone numbers, Mr. Alvarez had said. She pressed her ear to the cool paint and listened, like you listen for an apology you know you aren't owed. Nothing. She slid the chain across the bedroom door with the satisfaction of people who put their hand on a lever and feel it do a job. She told one person, Maya, from the diner, Maya who had lost a brother to a river and a mother to a silence she couldn't be talked out of. They sat on the back steps behind the soda machine with cheap coffee in cups you can fold. Tess told the story the way people do when they need someone to make the shape of belief with their face. Maya listened without laughing. Does it feel like you? She asked. Eyes turned toward the alley's narrow sky. Like if you spoke long enough, you'd recognize your own voice inside it. No, Tess said. It feels like somebody who learned my name without stealing it. Then do what it says, Maya murmured, until it stops needing you to. At 1:17 that night, the whisper came with urgency in its small. But there. Tess woke upright inside before her body caught up. Tess, the whisper said, and then sharper. Now. She kept still. The bedroom door chain tightened a fraction, a link accepting a story it didn't like. Something on the other side tried the knob with patience, then less patience. The chain held. The wrong piece of dark in the hall leaned and leaned back, as if rehearsing for a life it hadn't earned. It did not speak her name this time, only her door. Tess counted. At 30, the knob let go. At 40, footsteps went nowhere. Because the building isn't a place you can walk to, it is a place you learn to be. At 50, the whisper let a breath leave it like a small laugh, has forgotten it will sound like a laugh. Days fell into a rhythm miles from normal and close to workable. She woke without alarms and made eggs on low so the room would smell like something other than soap. She started to put things on the wall, 3 postcards from the coast her sister sent, and 2 photographs of her parents before the winter that made both of them quieter. She opened the window during storms because the rain begged for it, and because a wet city smells like the same truth in 100 languages. She taught herself to nap in the afternoon for 40 minutes because that's what people who live on a schedule not of their choosing do. When it ended without ceremony. 3 weeks after the first whisper, at 1:17 a.m., there was nothing. Not the voice, not the wrong piece of dark, not even the sense of attention adjusting itself. Tess lay awake with the kind of stillness you only get in empty theaters. Her name did not come. The neon below turned its red off like a promise kept. She slept. The next night, nothing. The next, the same. The chain crossed the bracket and rested without being asked to perform. The fan counted, the laundromat breathed, the bus made its route. The city wore her name and did not say it out loud. She missed it. Not the fear, the certainty. The way a rule had been made for her that she could follow and succeed at by doing as little as possible. She told no one about that part because people who have done hard things all their lives don't say out loud that sometimes they're grateful for the kind of test you can pass by being quiet. A week after it stopped, she woke at 1:17 anyway. Habit is just love in different clothes. The pillow beside her felt cool. The room felt like a normal room doing a normal job. From the hallway, a tenant she didn't know coughed, the human kind that says everyone breathes. The laundromat sign downstairs made no light. The soda machine hummed on like a small round planet that keeps its own time. "Tess," she said softly, like a greeting. The room didn't answer. She smiled into the dark, because not every story has to end with the door kicked in and the scream discovered under the furniture. Sometimes it ends with a person learning to keep their face turned the right way when the night asks for something it didn't earn. She dreamed of a boarding house and a girl who knocked on doors because someone had taught her that gratitude sounds like a footstep, and a woman who pressed her hand to a window the way you test a cake and see whether it will hold. In the morning, she went to work and poured coffee for a man who always ordered 2 and left 1 untouched for the person he used to be. She refilled sugar for a table of women who set their purses on chairs as if saving seats for friends late from wakefulness. She bought batteries just because and put them in a drawer where the important things go when you don't yet know what they're for. Every now and then, rare but real, some complex quiet gathers in the corner of her room, the way a draft does when the season forgets itself. She keeps her eyes on the window. She counts to 30. She feels the mattress decide it is only spring and fabric. And when a whisper the size of breath, placed exactly where a voice would be if the person speaking didn't want to wake anyone else, shapes a word that could be her name or could be only the memory of it, she answers in the only way the night ever respected. She does not turn, she waits. And in the waiting, the room remembers itself. The city forgets her for a while. And the thing that wanted first glances and doors opened for the wrong reasons and the kind of attention that costs more than you can afford, lets go of her name, as if it had been practicing saying it back to her, not calling her at all. This house knows when you're awake. The house on Blackwood Road was advertised as quaint, historic, and exceptionally private. 3 acres of overgrown land, a small clapboard structure painted a faded robin's egg blue, and a long, winding driveway that ended abruptly at a dense thicket of pines. It was a bargain, almost suspiciously so. But I was tired of city noise, of constant sirens, and the hum of traffic that never truly slept. I craved silence. I craved space. This house, despite the slightly unsettling quiet that seemed to hang around it even on a windy day, felt like salvation. I moved in mid-September, the air crisp and carrying the scent of damp leaves. The interior was simple, stripped of character by previous owners, save for a few stubborn patches of floral wallpaper in the pantry and the deep, rich smell of old wood that permeated every room. My first few nights were blissful. The silence was profound, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the rustle of unseen creatures in the woods. I slept soundly, something I hadn't done in years, waking to the gentle light filtering through the ancient oak outside my bedroom window. The unease began subtly, like a hairline crack appearing in plaster. I'd leave a coffee mug on the kitchen counter and later find it inexplicably moved a few inches to the left, as if nudged by an invisible hand. Books I'd placed carefully on the nightstand would be slightly ajar, their spines tilted in a way that suggested they'd been handled. I dismissed it as my own absent-mindedness, the quirks of an old house. Old houses groan, they settle, they play tricks on the mind. That's what I told myself. Then came the sounds. Not the friendly creaks and groans of settling wood, but distinct, intentional noises. A soft, rhythmic tap from the floorboards directly above my head as I watched TV downstairs. A faint, almost musical hum that seemed to emanate from the walls, only to cease the moment I tried to pinpoint its source. The sharp, sudden click of a doorknob turning, followed by absolute silence, making me jump from my seat and scan the empty hallway. My heart rate began its nightly ritual of acceleration. I started to notice a pattern, a chilling correlation. These incidents, the moved objects, the purposeful sounds, never happened when I was actively engaged, making noise or moving about. They happened in the quiet moments, when I sat still, lost in thought, when I paused my music to make a phone call. Most disturbingly, they happened when I was drifting off to sleep. The house, it seemed, was most active when my guard was down, when the veil between consciousness and unconsciousness was thinnest. It was learning my rhythms, my vulnerabilities. My paranoia grew. I found myself obsessively checking door locks, double-tapping light switches to ensure they were truly off or on. The shadows in the corners of rooms seemed deeper, more alive. I started avoiding certain rooms after dusk, like the empty guest bedroom upstairs, which felt impossibly cold even with the heating on full blast. I convinced myself that the house had a consciousness, a malevolent awareness, and it was slowly, deliberately driving me mad. One night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to ignore the phantom whispers I thought I heard. My eyes were heavy, my body tired, but my mind raced. The room was dark, save for the sliver of moonlight outlining the window frame. I could feel the pull of sleep, the pleasant drift into unconsciousness. Just as my eyelids began to droop, I heard a soft, almost breathy sigh from directly above me. It wasn't the house. It was too close, too personal. It sounded like someone exhaling inches from my face. My eyes snapped open, and the silence that followed was heavy, expectant. The house knew I was awake. After that, sleep became a battleground. I'd lie rigidly, feigning unconsciousness, trying to trick whatever it was. I'd close my eyes, regulate my breathing, even let my jaw go slack. But the moment my mind truly began to disengage, a new torment would begin. The gentle, insistent tap, tap, tap against the headboard, vibrating through the pillow and into my skull. The distinct sensation of the mattress dipping beside me, as if an invisible weight had settled there, pressing down on the springs. Sometimes, a breath of cold air would drift across my face, carrying a faint, musty scent like old earth and damp stone, making my skin prickle with goosebumps, followed by a fleeting impression of a presence leaning over me just beyond the reach of sight. I tried leaving the lights on, but the house would respond by flickering them, slowly at first, then rapidly, until the bulb would pop and plunge the room into absolute darkness, leaving me in a terrifying void. I'd try to sleep on the couch downstairs, only to hear the unmistakable sound of footsteps pacing directly above me, matching my movements. If I turned over, the pacing would halt for a beat, then resume, a mocking rhythm of my own unrest. It was playing with me, a predator toying with its prey, and I was losing. My exhaustion was a weapon being wielded against me. I confessed to my sister, Sarah. She listened patiently, her brow furrowed, her eyes filled with a concern that was more for my mental state than for any supposed haunting. "It's just the stress of moving, Max," she said gently. "You're overtired. You need a break. A change of scenery." She didn't believe me, of course. How could she? I barely believed myself. Yet the terror was visceral, undeniable. But the fear was real. It was a cold knot in my stomach, a constant hum in my ears, a relentless pressure behind my eyes. Desperate, I started fighting back. I installed motion sensor cameras, pointing them at every doorway and the stairs, hoping to catch a glimpse, a flicker of proof. I bought loud wind chimes for the porch, hoping the constant clatter would deter whatever silent presence haunted the house, would create enough ambient noise to mask its subtle aggressions. I even tried burning sage, the pungent smoke curling around the corners of the rooms, making me feel foolish but utterly desperate. The internet, a dangerous wellspring of both knowledge and delusion, suggested salt lines across thresholds, iron bells, and ancient incantations. I tried some, then felt an overwhelming wave of self-pity and embarrassment. The cameras recorded nothing but shadows and dust motes dancing in the infrared light. The wind chimes would fall silent at night, even on the breeziest evenings, only to resume their tinkling in the morning, as if a hand had gently cupped them through the hours of darkness. The sage did nothing but make the house smell like a poorly attended spiritual convention, and the feeling of being watched only intensified, as if my feeble attempts were amusing to it. The house was impervious. It observed. It waited. The psychological toll was immense. I lost weight. My skin was sallow, my eyes constantly bloodshot. Simple tasks became monumental efforts. I'd stare blankly at my laptop, unable to focus, my thoughts consumed by the next impending night. I started leaving the house for long drives, just to feel a sense of escape, even if temporary. I'd park by the ocean, the roar of the waves a balm to my frayed nerves, and watch the sun set, dreading the moment I'd have to return to Blackwood Road. The quiet no longer felt peaceful. It felt like a trap, waiting to snap shut. One terrifying night, I managed to doze off, my exhaustion finally overcoming my fear in a moment of utter vulnerability. I woke with a gasp, not from a sound, but from a vivid, suffocating dream. In the dream, I was trapped within the very walls of the house, surrounded by pulsing darkness, the timber and plaster pressing in on me, unable to move or breathe, a silent scream caught in my throat. As I opened my eyes in the real world, the room was bathed in the harsh red glow of the digital alarm clock. The time was 3:17 a.m. And directly over my bed, hanging from the ceiling like a silent, accusing eye, was one of my own motion sensor cameras. It was off, the small red light extinguished. It had been moved from the hallway downstairs, where I had carefully positioned it just hours before. The lens, I noticed with a sickening jolt, was aimed directly at my face. Panic seized me, a cold, blinding wave. I ripped the camera down, my hands shaking so violently I almost dropped it. That wasn't just a coincidence. That was a message. It wasn't a passive presence. It was an active, intelligent force. It knew. It knew when I was awake, and it knew when I wasn't. It had moved the camera while I slept, positioning it to watch my most vulnerable moments. It wanted me to know that it was always there, always watching. It wanted me to know that there was no escape within its walls. I left the house that morning. I packed only essentials, throwing them into my car with frantic speed, my mind numb with terror. I didn't dare look back at the windows that felt like eyes, judging my hasty retreat. I didn't sell it. I couldn't. It felt wrong, like passing a curse onto someone else, like an unpardonable betrayal. I left it there, sitting alone on Blackwood Road, the blue paint fading further with each passing season, the dense thicket of pines slowly reclaiming the overgrown driveway. I imagined it still standing there, still waiting, still knowing. Now I live in a studio apartment in a bustling city. The constant hum of traffic, the blare of car horns, the distant sirens, they're no longer irritants. They are a comfort. They are noise. They are proof that I am not alone. That there are other people, other lives, filling the space around me, creating a cacophony that drowns out the quiet whispers of memory. I have found a strange solace in the relentless clamor of urban life. But sometimes, late at night, when the city quiets down to a low drone, and I lie in my bed, perfectly still, I feel it. A subtle shift in the air pressure, a faint breath of cold that has no source. A soft, almost imperceptible whisper that brushes against my ear, just on the edge of hearing, saying nothing intelligible but implying everything, and a chilling, undeniable awareness that wherever I am, whatever I do, the house remembers. It waits. And it always, always knows.